When you speak Psalm 23, you are not performing a religious exercise or repeating sacred words out of habit. You are entering into alignment with a spiritual reality that already exists. Alignment is powerful because heaven does not respond to noise, it responds to agreement. The moment your words come into agreement with God's truth, your inner world begins to shift. Many people speak words filled with fear, doubt, and uncertainty, then wonder why their lives feel unstable. But when you speak, "The Lord is my shepherd," you are declaring that your life is not random, your steps are not accidental, and your future is not left to chance. Religious repetition has no life in it because it comes from the mind, not from faith. Alignment, however, comes from the Spirit. It is when your heart, your mouth, and your belief move together as one. When you align with Psalm 23, you are positioning your soul under divine leadership. You are saying, "I am no longer the source of my security. I am no longer the manager of my destiny." That surrender releases peace, and peace is the gateway to abundance. Spiritual alignment quiets the emotional storms inside you. Anxiety weakens because it cannot survive in agreement with trust. Fear dissolves because it has no authority when the shepherd is acknowledged. This is why speaking Psalm 23 brings such deep calm. Calm is not weakness. Calm is evidence that you know who is leading you. Only those who trust deeply can detach emotionally from outcomes. Only those who are aligned can remain steady when circumstances fluctuate. When alignment happens, striving stops. You no longer chase validation, money, or results with desperation. You move with confidence because you know provision flows from relationship, not effort. Heaven does not rush, panic, or struggle. And when you align with God's word, that same rhythm enters your life. The soul becomes anchored, the heart becomes assured, and the mind becomes clear. Speaking Psalm 23 is aligning your inner world with God's order. Once the inner world is aligned, the outer world begins to rearrange itself. This is how abundance enters, not through force, but through agreement. True abundance does not begin with accumulation, it begins with assurance. When a person knows deep within their spirit that God is their source, striving loses its urgency. Most people chase provision because they are uncertain about tomorrow. They work harder not out of vision, but out of fear. Yet fear has never produced lasting abundance. Trust does. Trust shifts the posture of the heart from grasping to receiving, and heaven responds to that posture. When you rely on effort alone, you live in constant tension. You measure success by outcomes, and your peace rises and falls with circumstances. But when trust becomes your foundation, peace becomes stable. You no longer panic when results are delayed, because you understand that delay is not denial. This inner security is what allows abundance to flow naturally. God does not pour overflow into anxious vessels because anxiety leaks. Trust creates capacity. Striving says, "If I don't push, nothing will happen." Trust says, "Because God is faithful, I can move with confidence and rest." Rest does not mean passivity, it means freedom from desperation. You still act, you still work, but your actions are guided by purpose rather than pressure. This is why those who trust God often seem calm, even in intense seasons. They are not careless, they are anchored. Abundance responds to alignment, not anxiety. When you detach emotionally from outcomes, you stop forcing doors open. You wait with expectancy instead of impatience. This emotional detachment is not indifference, it is strength. It signals maturity in faith. It tells God, "I trust you enough to let you decide the timing, the method, and the measure." That level of trust attracts divine provision because it honors God as the true source. Striving narrows your vision. Trust expands it. When you strive, you see only lack and obstacles. When you trust, you see opportunity and guidance. Your mind becomes clear, your decisions become wiser, and your energy is preserved. God's abundance is not rushed, chaotic, or stressful. It flows with order and peace. True abundance is not something you chase, it is something that follows those who trust. When the heart rests in God's sufficiency, provision finds its way without struggle. This is why trust, not striving, becomes the doorway through which lasting abundance enters a life. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood because people confuse it with indifference, but they are not the same. Indifference comes from apathy. Detachment comes from confidence. When a person is emotionally detached, it does not mean they do not care. It means they are no longer controlled. Their peace is not dependent on people's reactions, sudden changes, or uncertain outcomes. This kind of detachment is a sign that the inner world has found its anchor in God, not in circumstances. When your confidence is rooted in God's sufficiency, you stop reacting impulsively. You are no longer pulled into emotional highs and lows by every success or setback. This steadiness is spiritual strength. Weakness reacts, strength remains composed. Emotional detachment allows you to observe situations clearly instead of being swallowed by them. It gives you clarity, and clarity leads to wise decisions. Many people lose energy not because life is hard, but because they are emotionally over-attached to results. They invest their peace into outcomes they cannot control. When expectations are unmet, frustration rises. But when you release the need to control outcomes, peace returns. This release is not surrendering responsibility, it is surrendering anxiety. You still act with excellence, but you no longer carry emotional weight that was never yours to bear. Spiritual detachment strengthens faith because it shifts trust from self to God. You stop asking, "What if this fails?" and begin declaring, "Angel is leading me." That shift transforms how you walk through uncertainty. Instead of panic, there is patience. Instead of fear, there is assurance. You understand that your value is not proven by success, and your future is not threatened by delay. Purpose becomes clearer when emotions are stable. Emotional turbulence clouds vision, but detachment clears it. You stop chasing approval, validation, or instant results. You move with quiet authority, knowing that what is meant for you cannot be taken away. This inner confidence attracts favor because it reflects trust in God's order. Emotional and spiritual detachment does not harden the heart, it strengthens it. It allows you to love without fear, work without stress, and wait without anxiety. When the soul is anchored in God, emotions take their rightful place, not as rulers, but as servants. This is the posture of inner strength, unshaken confidence, and divine purpose. When the soul is restless, provision feels delayed, blocked, or distant. Not because God is withholding, but because restlessness creates resistance within. A restless soul is always rushing, questioning, doubting, and trying to force outcomes. But when the soul rests, it comes into harmony with God's pace, and that alignment allows provision to move freely. Rest is not inactivity. It is inner agreement with God's leadership. It is the quiet confidence that says, "I am being led, even when I cannot see the full path." Acceleration does not come from pressure. It comes from peace. God moves swiftly where trust is established. When the soul is anxious, it sends mixed signals. Faith with fear, prayer with panic. But when the soul rests, the signal becomes clear. Heaven responds to clarity. Rest says, "God, I trust your timing more than my urgency." That trust removes internal friction, and what once felt slow begins to unfold with ease. Many delays people experience are not external, they are internal. Worry slows perception. Fear clouds discernment. But rest sharpens spiritual sensitivity. A rested soul hears guidance more clearly, recognizes opportunities faster, and responds with wisdom instead of haste. This is why provision seems to accelerate when peace enters the heart. You stop missing what God is doing because your inner noise has quieted. Rest also preserves strength. Exhaustion leads to poor decisions, but rest renews vision. When you are rested in your soul, you do not waste energy chasing what is not assigned to you. You move with discernment, not desperation. That precision accelerates progress. You arrive sooner not because you rushed, but because you were led. God often brings provision quietly. Those who are frantic overlook it. Those who are resting recognize it. Rest creates awareness. You notice divine connections, timely ideas, and subtle openings that anxiety would have ignored. What looks like sudden acceleration is often the result of inner stillness that allowed God's plan to surface. When the soul rests, faith deepens. When faith deepens, resistance dissolves. And when resistance dissolves, flow begins. This is why rest is powerful. It is not a pause in progress. It is the alignment that allows progress to move unhindered. Provision does not struggle to reach a resting soul. It finds it naturally, smoothly, and at the right time. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a disconnecting force. It separates the heart from trust and the mind from clarity. When fear dominates the inner world, it creates distance between a person and the flow of God's provision. Fear narrows vision, magnifies obstacles, and convinces the soul that lack is inevitable. But faith restores connection. Faith reconnects the heart to God's nature and the mind to God's promises. Fear speaks the language of scarcity. It constantly asks, what if? What if this fails? What if it doesn't come? What if I lose what I have? These questions drain strength and scatter focus. When fear is present, prayer becomes anxious, and expectation becomes weak. The soul prays but does not rest. That inner tension blocks the flow of abundance. Not because God is unwilling, but because fear resists trust. Faith does the opposite. Faith speaks the language of certainty. It does not deny challenges, but it refuses to give them authority. Faith restores the flow by re-establishing confidence in God's leadership. When faith rises, fear loses its voice. The heart becomes calm, and calm creates openness. An open heart receives more easily than a guarded one. Fear causes people to grasp, hoard, and control. This mindset closes the hands. Faith opens them. When you believe that God is your source, you no longer cling to what you have in panic. You release generously, wait patiently, and move confidently. This posture invites abundance because it aligns with God's nature. God flows where there is trust. Faith also sharpens discernment. Fear clouds judgment and leads to reactive decisions. Faith steadies the mind and allows wisdom to guide action. Many opportunities are missed not because they are absent, but because fear blinded the eyes. When faith restores the flow, you begin to recognize divine timing, wise connections, and open doors that were always there. The transition from fear to faith is not loud, it is internal. It happens when you choose trust over worry again and again. Each act of faith repairs the connection fear tried to break. As that connection strengthens, abundance moves freely once more. Provision flows, peace deepens, and the soul settles into assurance. Fear disconnects, but faith restores. And where faith is present, God's abundance is never far away. The need to control is often born from fear, not wisdom. When a person believes everything depends on their effort, they carry a heavy burden that was never meant to be theirs. But when the shepherd's presence becomes real in the heart, that burden begins to lift. Control fades not because responsibility is abandoned, but because trust has taken its place. The awareness that God is present removes the pressure to manage every detail. When you know you are being led, you stop forcing direction. You no longer rush decisions or panic over uncertainty. The shepherd does not push the sheep, he guides them. His presence brings assurance that the path is being watched over, even when it curves through unfamiliar terrain. This awareness quiets the inner voice that demands immediate answers. Peace replaces urgency. Control demands certainty. Trust allows mystery. When God's presence fills the soul, the need to understand everything dissolves. You become comfortable not knowing how things will unfold, because you know who is guiding you. This spiritual confidence produces emotional stability. You are no longer shaken by delays, changes, or unexpected turns. You remain calm because leadership is no longer self-generated. Letting go of control also frees the mind. Control exhausts because it requires constant vigilance. Trust restores because it allows rest. A trusting soul can wait without anxiety, act without fear, and move without tension. This freedom is not passive, it is powerful. It allows you to respond wisely rather than react emotionally. When the shepherd's presence is acknowledged, prayer changes. You stop pleading and start aligning. You stop demanding outcomes and start trusting timing. This shift invites divine involvement because it honors God as the one who leads, protects, and provides. God responds to trust more than urgency. Control often narrows vision, but trust expands it. When you release control, you begin to see beyond immediate problems. You recognize patterns, opportunities, and guidance that anxiety once obscured. Decisions become clearer because fear is no longer dictating them. The absence of control is not chaos. It is order under divine leadership. When the heart rests in God's presence, there is no need to manipulate people, force doors, or panic over outcomes. Life begins to move with rhythm instead of resistance. The shepherd's presence eliminates the need for control because it replaces it with confidence, peace, and unshakable trust. Inner peace is not the absence of problems. It is the assurance of direction. When a person is truly being led by God, there is a deep calm that settles in the soul, even when circumstances are uncertain. This peace is not emotional numbness, and it is not denial. It is the quiet confidence that says, "I am not lost." That assurance becomes the strongest evidence that God's hand is guiding each step. When God leads, He does not shout. He guides with clarity and gentleness. Inner peace becomes the confirmation signal. Confusion produces agitation, but divine leading produces stillness. Even in difficult seasons, the heart remains steady because it recognizes a alignment. This is why peace is such a powerful indicator. It tells you that your direction is right, even if the road is challenging. Many people search for signs outside themselves, but God often confirms His guidance internally. Peace acts as a spiritual compass. When you move toward what God has ordained, peace increases. When you move away, unrest grows. This is not coincidence, it is divine communication. The soul knows when it is aligned with God's will. Inner peace also protects the mind. When you are being led, you are not easily disturbed by opinions, pressure, or sudden changes. You can listen without being swayed and evaluate without fear. This stability allows wisdom to operate. Decisions made from peace carry longevity, while decisions made from anxiety often bring regret. Peace gives endurance. When the path is long, peace sustains. Without peace, perseverance feels heavy. With peace, endurance feels purposeful. You are able to wait without frustration and move without rain. This is how God keeps His people steady over time. Being led by God does not mean life becomes easy, but it does mean life becomes ordered. Peace keeps you from rushing ahead or falling behind. It keeps you centered. This centeredness attracts favor because it reflects trust in God's leadership. When inner peace governs the heart, fear loses influence. Worry no longer dictates movement. You begin to live from assurance rather than urgency. That assurance is not self-generated. It is the result of divine leading. Peace becomes the quiet witness that God is ahead of you, beside you, and within you, guiding every step with purpose and care. Maturity in faith is revealed not by how loudly a person speaks about belief, but by how calmly they wait. Emotional detachment from outcomes is one of the clearest signs that faith has moved beyond theory into trust. When someone is spiritually immature, every result feels urgent, and every delay feels threatening. But as faith matures, the heart learns to rest even while the answer is unfolding. Detachment does not mean you stop expecting. It means you stop demanding. You still pray, you still act, you still believe, but you release the need to control how and when God responds. This release is powerful because it honors God's sovereignty. It says, I trust you not only with the answer, but with the process. That level of trust reflects deep spiritual growth. Immature faith panics when things do not happen quickly. Mature faith remains steady because it understands timing. It knows that God works beyond what the eye can see. When you detach emotionally from outcomes, disappointment loses its power over you. You no longer swing between excitement and despair. Your faith becomes anchored, not reactive. This maturity brings freedom. You stop interpreting every setback as failure and every delay as rejection. Instead, you see life through a wider lens. You recognize preparation, refinement, and redirection. Emotional detachment allows you to stay joyful even when circumstances are incomplete. Joy becomes rooted in relationship, not results. Faith matures when trust replaces urgency. Urgency often disguises insecurity. Trust reveals confidence. When you are secure in God's character, you do not need constant reassurance. You can wait without anxiety and move without fear. This steadiness attracts peace, and clarity. Detachment also deepens discernment. When emotions are tied tightly to outcomes, judgment becomes clouded. But when you release emotional attachment, you gain perspective. You can evaluate situations without pressure and make decisions without fear of loss. This clarity is evidence of spiritual maturity. Mature faith understands that God's promises do not expire. What is meant for you will arrive at the right time. Emotional detachment is not giving up, it is growing up. It is the quiet strength that trusts God completely, allowing faith to operate with confidence, patience, and unwavering assurance. Overflow does not begin in circumstances, it begins in the soul. Long before abundance appears in visible form, it takes shape internally as peace, confidence, and trust. When the soul is aligned with God, it becomes fertile ground for increase. Without inner alignment, external gain often brings stress instead of joy. This is why God works from the inside outward. Fifth, soul determines capacity. A fearful soul cannot sustain abundance because fear distorts perception. It turns blessing into burden. But a peaceful soul can hold increase without losing balance. Inner wholeness creates space for overflow. When the soul is settled, the heart is no longer divided between faith and fear. That unity allows abundance to manifest without conflict. Many people desire more without preparing inwardly. They ask for overflow while carrying insecurity, impatience, and unrest. But God, in His wisdom, restores the soul first. He strengthens identity, stabilizes emotions, and deepens trust. This inner work is not delay, it is preparation. When overflow finally arrives, it does not overwhelm, it blesses. Overflow in the soul looks like contentment before increase. It looks like gratitude before provision. When gratitude fills the heart, it signals readiness. Gratitude is evidence that the soul recognizes God as the source. This recognition shifts focus away from lack and toward trust. Where trust exists, abundance follows naturally. Inner overflow also changes how you respond to others. You become generous, patient, and calm. You no longer compete or compare. Competition is a symptom of inner lack. Overflow produces generosity because it knows there is enough. This inner abundance attracts external favor because it reflects God's nature. When the soul overflows with peace, wisdom, and assurance, decisions improve. You are no longer driven by impulse. You move with discernment. This wisdom protects abundance once it arrives. Many lose externally because they were unprepared internally. But when the soul is full, abundance has a foundation. God's order is restoration, then provision, healing, then increase, alignment, then overflow. When the soul is whole, abundance has a place to settle. It flows not as pressure but as blessing. What appears suddenly on the outside has been growing quietly on the inside all along. The words we speak have power because said they shape our inner world, and the inner world shapes the outer world. Speaking God's word is not merely a ritual or tradition. It is a declaration of spiritual reality. When you speak Psalm 23, you are not only affirming faith, you are inviting transformation. Every syllable aligns your spirit with God's authority, and that alignment shifts your perspective, your emotions, and ultimately, your circumstances. The spoken word has the ability to reshape thinking. Many believers struggle with doubt and anxiety because their thoughts are unguarded. Fearful thoughts produce fearful outcomes. But when the mouth declares truth, the mind begins to absorb it. Speaking, "The Lord is my shepherd," reinforces that you are guided, protected, and provided for. This repeated declaration trains your spirit to trust rather than to worry, to rest rather than to strive, and to receive rather than to chase. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. When your inner life is aligned with God's promises, your actions become more purposeful, your decisions become clearer, and your relationships become healthier. Speaking the word is a way to consciously cultivate that alignment. It is not magic, it is agreement with divine order. What you agree with in spirit manifests in reality, often in ways that surpass human effort. Speaking God's word also strengthens authority over challenges. Life will bring obstacles, but the words of faith create an inner fortress. Fear, doubt, and confusion lose their grip when the word is spoken with conviction. This is why those who habitually declare God's promises often move through difficulties with calm assurance. The spoken word becomes a shield, not by power of human breath, but by the authority of the Spirit it represents. Consistent verbal declaration nurtures expectation. When you speak Psalm 23 regularly, your heart begins to anticipate guidance, provision, and protection. That expectation is not passive, it motivates inspired action. Speaking reshapes the soul first, and when the soul is aligned, the outer world cannot help but follow. The spoken word sets a chain reaction in motion. Belief solidifies in the spirit. Peace fills the heart, and abundance finds a natural pathway into life. Speaking the word transforms from practice to power, from habit to revelation. When you speak Psalm 23 with faith, you are not merely reading words. You are opening a door to God's abundance in every area of your life. Every declaration aligns your soul, steadies your heart, and strengthens your spirit. The peace, provision, and favor you seek do not come from striving, fear, or control. They come from trust, rest, and alignment with the shepherd. Your inner world determines your outer world. And when your spirit is anchored in his promises, lack cannot find a foothold. Speak with conviction. Trust without reservation. Rest without worry. Live from the assurance that the shepherd is guiding every step, restoring every soul, and pouring abundance into the life of all who dare to believe and declare. Your words are the key. Use them to unlock the fullness God has already prepared for you.